Ethan and I had known each other for what felt like our entire lives, ever since we were just children whose parents were business partners. Our bond was a constant, a given, something I never questioned until he met Sophie. After that, he started dedicating all of his time to her, and the space between us grew wider with each passing day. The day we both fell into the sea was the day that space became an uncrossable chasm. He swam directly to her without a moment of hesitation. Much later, as he stood beside my sterile white hospital bed, he looked down at me and said, "I thought you knew how to swim." I simply closed my eyes, unable to find the words to tell him that my feet had been hopelessly tangled in a discarded fishing net far below the surface. "Ethan, help me!" The desperate cry was torn from my throat as each wave pulled me further from shore, dragging me deeper into the ocean's grasp. "Ethan, help me!" I shouted again and again, the salty water crashing over my head, choking me. I did know how to swim, but my ankle was caught fast on something heavy and unyielding, pulling me down with relentless force. Sophie had also fallen into the water, but she was surrounded by a small crowd of people, and the water where she had tumbled in was much shallower. The only person near me, the only one I could call out to, was Ethan. "Ethan, help me." Then, from not far away, I heard Sophie's faint call. Another wave surged, and I held my breath, the sea feeling like it was playing a cruel game, pulling me under and then letting me surface just long enough to see Ethan pause as he heard her voice. "Ethan," I gasped, "my leg is caught on something." Before I could finish, the rising water stole my words. The next time I managed to fight my way to the surface, straining to see, all I could make out was Ethan's back as he swam away from me, a decision that seemed as natural to him as breathing. I had no strength left to fight. All my energy had been spent on those useless pleas for his help. As I finally sank towards the seabed, the pressure building in my ears, the last image my fading consciousness registered was Ethan carrying Sophie safely towards the shore. In truth, the signs had been there all along. Ethan had chosen Sophie over me a long time ago, in 100 small, subtle ways I hadn't wanted to see. We had known each other for 9 years. Our parents were partners in business, and we were so close that we ended up attending the same college, though we pursued different majors. In the beginning, Ethan treated me the same as he always had, but then Sophie appeared and everything changed. "Ethan, I can't stand that professor's class for another second," I complained, slamming my textbook shut on the library table where he was studying. "I think I might switch to your major." He glanced up at me, a familiar, teasing glint in his eye. "You're too lazy. Are you planning to ruin the reputation of my entire department?" Over the years, I had grown accustomed to his sharp tongue. It was just his way. In the beginning, his words would sometimes sting, but I came to realize they were just occasional remarks, usually followed by a kind gesture. I remembered a time when I accidentally shattered my mom's expensive new vase. He had stood there with his arms crossed, making sarcastic comments. "You've really done it now? Planning on an early inheritance?" I was already upset, and his teasing made me careless. I cut my hand on a piece of broken porcelain. Immediately, his demeanor changed. He rushed me over to the couch, gently tending to the wound, though the sarcastic remarks didn't completely stop. "Can't you do anything without using your brain?" he muttered as he applied antiseptic. Feeling unfairly targeted, I sniffed and pulled my hand back. "I don't need your help, Ethan," I snapped. "Just go home. I don't want to see you or hear you anymore." He looked at me with his lips pressed into a thin line, his expression darkening. After a long moment, he silently stood up. I sat there, stewing in my anger, but I stole glances at him as he carefully began picking up the large shards of glass from the floor, and my anger started to cool. My panic returned when my mom came home. As she began to ask angrily about her missing vase, Ethan stepped forward and took the blame without a second thought. As a result, his own mother grounded him for a week. So, when he made his comment about my laziness, I just gave a non-committal grunt. "If you don't want me to, then I won't. What's so great about your major anyway?" I had said similar things before, and he would usually just scoff and ignore me, but this time, he put down his pen and frowned, his gaze serious. "Have you ever considered," he said slowly, "that while you're casually belittling a major, there's someone else working day and night just for a scholarship in that very field? Don't you think your thoughtless words belittle her efforts? I was caught off guard by his sudden intensity. Who? I asked, confused. Sophie. That was the first time I heard her name from him. After that, Sophie began to appear frequently in the space between Ethan and me. She was, in Ethan's words, resilient and noble. Despite being pursued by wealthy students, she remained focused on her studies, working hard to maintain her scholarship. She was a self-supporting, sensible girl who had earned his deepest admiration. One afternoon after classes, I waited for Ethan outside his lecture hall. "Ethan, let's go get hot pot at that place we like," I said eagerly as he walked out. He rejected the idea flat out. "You go by yourself. I'm going with Sophie." After all our years of friendship, he still called me by my full name, Clara. My smile slowly faded. I paused, then tried again. "Well, let's all go together. We all have to eat, right?" "She can't handle spicy food. It's better if we don't." Suddenly, I sensed something was profoundly different. The Ethan I knew had never been this considerate of someone else's preferences, especially over mine. "Let's go. Sophie might be down any minute," he said, turning to leave. As if on cue, she appeared at the top of the stairs. I was about to nod and agree to their plans when Ethan grabbed her wrist. "What's the hurry?" he asked, his voice softening. I could tell that despite his attempt at a stern tone, his concern was genuine. Sophie smiled and patted his hand reassuringly. "I can handle a little spice, don't worry." Ethan's frown relaxed and he looked back at me. "All right, let's go." I nodded slowly. "Okay." For a strange moment, I felt as if they were the ones who were childhood friends, who had known each other for years, and I was the one who was the outsider. Sitting at the hot pot restaurant, a place we had always gone for the spiciest broth, I watched as Ethan ordered a mild, clear broth just for her. I sat quietly to the side, observing their interaction. Sophie looked eager to try the food, but Ethan was being very protective, scooping a meatball from the clear soup for her and placating her like a child. I pushed around the ingredients in my own now cold hot pot, my appetite suddenly gone. Just then, I heard a commotion and looked up. Sophie was coughing, her face red. Ethan was pouring her a glass of water, his voice stern. "Huh, I told you that you couldn't handle this one. Why did you have to keep trying?" I watched as Sophie choked, her face turning an alarming shade of red. I was about to offer her my glass of water, but Ethan raised a hand to block me, giving me a look as if to ask why I hadn't warned her she couldn't handle it. I was puzzled as to why he was blaming me. "Where are you two going?" I asked as Ethan grabbed Sophie's bag. "I'm taking her somewhere else to eat," he said coolly, not looking at me. "You can eat by yourself." With that, he whisked Sophie out the door, leaving me alone at the table. The pot in front of me continued to boil, and I stared blankly at the empty chair across from me. "Would you like me to add some more water for you?" the waiter asked kindly. I snapped back to reality and gave him an awkward smile. "Yes, please." "Thank you." The hot steam rose from the pot, making my eyes feel slightly moist. That day, I think I put every single dish I had ordered into the spicy red soup, stuffing my face until I couldn't eat another bite. In the middle of my solitary meal, Ethan sent me a message. "Sorry for getting mad at you." I stared at it for a few seconds before casually turning off my phone without replying. As I approached my dormitory building later that evening, I saw Ethan waiting downstairs. I pressed my lips together and walked over to him. "What's up?" His expression wasn't pleasant. "Why didn't you reply to my message?" I hadn't expected him to be waiting to ask me that. I forced a smile. "Oops, my bad, I forgot." He stared at me thoughtfully for a moment before asking, "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," I replied casually, trying my best to act normal. Ethan let out a sigh. "Don't sweat the small stuff. I'll take you out for another meal tomorrow at noon to make it up to you." He reached out to ruffle my hair like he used to, but I subtly moved my head to avoid his touch. "No need," I said with a small chuckle. "I ate way too much today. I don't think I'll feel like having hot pot again anytime soon." His hand hesitated in midair. He let it drop. "We can eat something else tomorrow, then." I kicked at a small stone on the pavement and looked at him apologetically. "I'm sorry, but I already made plans with my roommates for tomorrow." "What do you mean?" Ethan raised an eyebrow, his emotions unreadable. He smirked sarcastically, his voice low. Why does this sound like I'm begging you to have a meal with me? It's not a big deal, and you're still holding a grudge. I'll ask you one last time. Are you coming tomorrow? Sorry, I'm hanging out with my roommates tomorrow, I said, interrupting him and replying directly. Sophie didn't just change Ethan's attitude towards me. Her appearance made me see many things more clearly, and my feelings for him were no longer the same. Ethan chuckled, a cold sound. Whatever. That was the first time we parted on bad terms. Ethan and I continued our silent feud for a long time after that. There were only a few main academic buildings on campus, and with a heavy class load in our freshman year, I would often run into him in various places. Most of the time, Sophie was by his side. They went to class together, had meals together, and even went for strolls on the athletic fields in the evening. This was a side of him I had never seen before. And yes, I was a little jealous. I couldn't pinpoint the exact moment I had started to like Ethan. Perhaps it was his impatient and sarcastic demeanor that was always quickly followed by his ability to solve my problems and the special care he showed me that no one else received. But it seemed that this special exception was no longer mine alone, and this unspoken love I held for him was likely destined to come to an abrupt and painful end. Once something starts down a path, it doesn't usually end at the beginning. I never imagined that one day Ethan would stand on the opposite side of me, all for Sophie's sake, and accuse me without bothering to distinguish right from wrong. My roommates and I had signed up for an experience sharing exchange meeting to earn some extra credits. It started at 7 a.m., a rather unpopular time, so there weren't many people registered, fewer than 100 in total. My roommate, being lazy, asked me to go ahead and buy breakfast first. She hurried in just as the exchange meeting began. Several student representatives took turns speaking and sharing their experiences on stage. I saw Ethan in the audience, which surprised me for a moment because he rarely attended these kinds of events. But the person who walked on stage next quickly explained my confusion. The first person to speak was Sophie. My roommate was slightly bent over, trying to eat her bread discreetly, when Sophie suddenly slammed her hand on the podium, creating a loud noise that made everyone flinch. I looked up, startled. "Can you get into a university but not learn how to respect people?" she said, her voice sharp. She then looked expressionlessly in our direction. Suddenly, all eyes were on us. I instinctively looked at Ethan, who just stared back at me as if I were a complete stranger. Confused, I turned to Sophie and asked, "What? Is it respectful to eat while others are speaking?" she questioned, her voice dripping with condescension. I glanced at my roommate, who looked equally puzzled. She quickly gulped down the bread in her mouth, her face flushing as she quietly apologized. "I'm sorry I didn't have time to eat breakfast," Sophie sneered. "Couldn't you wake up earlier or eat after the event?" I furrowed my brow, finding her attitude unnecessarily aggressive. I stood up, meeting her gaze. "My roommate has low blood sugar. If she doesn't have breakfast, she'll feel really uncomfortable." She smirked. "Then why didn't she get up earlier? It seems like she doesn't value this exchange meeting, or perhaps she simply has no concept of respecting others." I was taken aback by her harsh judgment. Then Ethan, who was standing beside Sophie, spoke against me. "Isn't she already in the wrong? Why are you making such a big deal out of it?" Ethan's tone was calm, but there was a sharp edge to his words that was clearly directed at me. I stared at him, my hand under the table clenching into a fist so tight my nails dug into my palm. "Isn't she?" he repeated. "In college, no one is going to indulge your temper." In the middle of the silent confrontation, a low sob suddenly broke the tension. It was Sophie. She was crying. Ethan quickly turned to look at her with concern. She dramatically laid her head on the desk in the front row, burying her face and sobbing. I watched in amazement, completely baffled as to why she was crying. Was it really just because someone had eaten a piece of bread? Sophie's cries grew louder, her shoulders trembling uncontrollably. After consoling her gently for a moment, Ethan lifted his head, his brows furrowed as he said coldly, "Clara, proudly doing something wrong and then pretending you're in the right? Is this what you were taught at home?" I was utterly incredulous, unable to believe he would say something so cruel. Some of the girls sitting nearby started comforting Sophie, glancing at me and whispering softly, "Exactly. She has no shame." My roommate suddenly sat up straight and told Ethan loudly, "It was my food. Why are you yelling at Clara for it?" I looked around and saw the growing dissatisfaction on the faces of the other students. Before Ethan could speak again, I took a deep breath and glanced at Sophie, who was still shaking from her sobs. "I'm sorry for eating while you were speaking. That was not right of us," I said calmly, and then added, "But if your tolerance for minor distractions is that low, I don't really recommend you speak in public again." After saying that, I didn't look at anyone else. I just grabbed my roommate and left the room. As soon as we stepped out, a familiar voice called out from behind, "Stop right there!" Ethan had followed me out. I had no intention of engaging with him, so I pretended not to hear and kept walking. But he reached out, grabbed my arm, and turned me around to face him. "Do you still have something to say?" I asked, giving him a flat glance. Ethan pulled me closer and looked down at me. "Is this the way you apologize to someone?" I nodded seriously. "Well, how about if I bowed down to her? Would that work for you?" Ethan was stunned, as if he couldn't believe I would mock him like that. I used the opportunity to free my arm from his grasp. I gave him a nonchalant look before stepping back and turning to leave. "Clara!" I didn't turn back. I heard his unfamiliar tone in my ear. "How could you become like this now?" He paused for a moment before finally finding the word he was looking for. "Vulgar." In his eyes, he and Sophie were different from the ordinary students. They had received a superior education and lived a life others could only dream of. Sophie, he believed, valued dignity above all else, so their ideologies coincided. Ethan had once lumped me in with him, but after this confrontation, I felt honored to be excluded. I blinked at the road ahead, leaving without looking back, pretending as if nothing had happened. Back in my dorm room, I blocked all of Ethan's contacts. Different paths lead to different destinations. That was the truth I was finally learning. As for the little flutter I used to feel for him, it had completely dissipated the moment he and Sophie united against me. One night, I had just finished blow-drying my hair when my phone rang, displaying an unknown number. I answered it without thinking. Apart from the faint sound of static, there was only silence on the other end. I glanced at my phone screen again and tentatively said, "Hello? Have you had enough?" It was Ethan, his voice sounding husky. I replied emotionlessly, "You have the wrong number." As I was about to hang up, Ethan stopped me. "When are you going to unblock me?" he asked urgently. I didn't understand. "Unblock what?" He seemed to be gritting his teeth. "From the blacklist." I replied casually, "I'll do it when I have time." After saying that, I hung up and cleanly added that number to the blacklist as well. I thought that Ethan and I would continue on like this, in our separate worlds. That was until I received a phone call from my mother. "Clara, what's going on between you and Ethan?" Her professional, businesslike tone made me feel as if she were Ethan's mother, not mine. "Not much," I said. "Then why did he have to ask me to call you about you two going to the beach?" "What beach?" I was puzzled. She explained briefly that Ethan and a group of his classmates had organized a beach party, and he wanted me to go along. I couldn't understand it. "Why?" She explained simply, "You've known each other for so many years. Isn't there any conflict between you that can't be resolved? Besides, your dad has business dealings with their family." I listened quietly, almost instantly understanding her point. The last sentence was the key. I remained silent for a while, unsure whether to blame Ethan's impulsiveness, my mother's lack of consideration for my feelings, or my own helplessness in the situation. Soon after, I received a text from an unknown number. "Saturday morning at 10 a.m. I'll be waiting for you downstairs in the dorm." I stared at the screen, smirked, didn't reply, and didn't block that number. On that Saturday, when I came downstairs, Ethan was already there waiting. Usually it was me who ended up waiting for him, but now seeing him there brought me no joy. "You look like someone forced you to be here," Ethan commented on my sour expression. I chuckled without humor, stopped, and turned around to look him straight in the eyes. "Isn't it obvious in your own heart why I feel that way?" He pressed his lips together, his expression dark but He didn't argue. I almost instantly spotted Sophie among the group of people waiting, but I just ignored her and walked past. Since there were too many people, they had rented a minibus for transportation. Because I get car sick easily, I saw an empty seat in the front and sat down. When Ethan and Sophie got on the bus last, they exchanged a glance and then looked hesitantly at me, as if wanting to say something. "What's up?" I frowned. Sophie spoke first. "This seat is mine." "Oh?" I replied, surprised by her entitled tone. But when I sat down, I didn't see anything here reserving it. The other students knew about my motion sickness and had deliberately left this seat empty for me. Seeing that I had no intention of moving, Ethan approached and said gently, "I saved this seat for her after asking everyone." He rarely spoke to me in such a gentle manner, but this time it was for Sophie. "Ethan," I said, looking at him calmly, "do you remember how severely I get motion sick?" Ethan knew about my condition, yet he still chose to stand up for Sophie. If it had been any other classmate, I would have gladly volunteered to give up the seat. After all, it had been saved for someone. But when that specific someone turned out to be Sophie, my reaction changed accordingly. The people around us started murmuring, clearly not happy with the situation. "Why should I move? I sat down first to claim the front seat." "Yeah, I want to play games in the back so I won't get car sick." Sophie's situation became awkward, her pride clearly wounded. She crossed her arms, raised her chin, and scanned the group with a blank expression before shrugging. "Fine. I just won't go then." She was about to get off the bus when Ethan quickly stepped in and held her back. In the end, Ethan had to call in a favor from someone else in the front row, and Sophie finally sat down comfortably. As Ethan walked towards the back of the bus, I unintentionally locked eyes with him, sensing his reproach. He seemed to think Sophie was overreacting, but he was also annoyed with me. As I drifted off to sleep, clutching my bag, she was still awake, reading a book. During a particularly bumpy stretch of road near our destination, I had to press on my acupressure points to keep from getting sick. Surprisingly, Sophie remained completely unfazed. It dawned on me then that all she wanted was to showcase the special treatment she received from the group. When I stepped out of the car to breathe the fresh air at the beach, I suddenly wanted to curse myself for enduring the nauseating misery my mother's few words had caused. At the same time, I could hear Ethan and Sophie's flirtatious banter nearby. Everyone was either excitedly swimming in the sea or starting up a barbecue. I walked to a secluded spot on the beach, away from all of them. "Feeling better?" It was Ethan's voice from behind me. His voice was still as flat and emotionless as ever, but for a fleeting moment, I felt like I was back with the old Ethan. The Ethan who, though sharp-tongued, was always rational. The Ethan who, though he teased me relentlessly, would silently stand behind me and give me the confidence I needed. I didn't retort as I usually would. Still feeling queasy from the motion sickness, I just shook my head and stayed silent. Ethan sat down next to me without saying a word, gazing out at the vast sea. "Why can't you get along with Sophie?" he finally asked. With a cold snort, I stood up, took a few steps back, and looked down at him. "Ethan, are you serious? Can't you see that it's her who has a problem with me?" I asked him incredulously. Ethan stood up as well, frowning helplessly. "Can't you be a little more understanding towards her?" he asked. I looked at him for a moment, wondering if this was a logical statement coming from the person I once knew. "Why should I?" I asked. "Sophie worked hard to get where she is. She's sensitive and—" "I don't care," I said, feeling all my anger momentarily dissipate as I finally accepted the fact that he would unconditionally favor Sophie no matter what. I interrupted him calmly. "Does any of that have anything to do with me?" I looked down at a crab shell half buried in the sand, not wanting to argue with him about Sophie's behavior anymore. "Ethan, don't lecture me because of Sophie anymore. I may dislike her, but I haven't tried to make you dislike her either. So please don't force me to like her. You can do whatever you want with her in the future. Just don't bother me with it." I said it all calmly. The sea breeze blew sand onto my feet, tickling them. After a while, a voice came from behind me. "So, are you breaking up with me?" Ethan asked. I remained silent, unsure of how to define breaking up in our context. The word seemed childish, but was also unexpectedly fitting. I looked at the shimmering sea and waded into the water by myself. wanting to put some distance between us. I didn't go too deep, but the waves gradually pushed me further out. Just as I realized I should probably swim back, a strong wave from the deep sea suddenly surged, pulling me further out. I struggled to swim back towards the shore, but I couldn't move an inch. A series of successive waves crashed over me, and I realized with a jolt of panic that my left calf was entangled in a fishing net. The other end of the net was hooked on something solid on the seabed, probably coral. I tried to move my leg, but it was stuck fast. Then, I remembered something and looked frantically towards the shore. Luckily, Ethan hadn't gone far. "Ethan, help me!" I gasped, watching as he turned and rushed towards me. I breathed a sigh of relief, watching his approaching figure. But in the next moment, Sophie's voice cried out, "Ethan, help me!" Ethan halted his steps. He hesitated for just a second, and then, decisively, he turned and swam towards Sophie. Water rushed into my nose and mouth, and my consciousness began to fade. As I sank beneath the surface, I knew that the boy who had once defended me without a second thought years ago had disappeared forever. I woke up again in a hospital bed. My mom was sitting by my bedside, and when she saw that I was awake, she leaned in, asking, "Clara, are you thirsty?" I shook my head slightly, feeling a painful itch deep in my lungs with every breath, desperately trying not to cough. She sat back down. In the quiet room, a soft sob could be heard. It was my mom. I looked at the stripes on the sleeve of my hospital gown, not saying a word. She was still busy with work, even though she clearly felt guilty towards me. She was quickly called away by a phone call from her office. I was left alone in the hospital room, the silence making time seem to stand still. After some time, the door to my room was pushed open again. I turned to see Ethan standing in the doorway, his expression uncertain. I didn't bother to try and decipher his emotions, turning my head away from him quickly. He walked over, looking down at me from his towering height. Then he said something I never would have expected. "Aren't you able to swim?" he asked. I trembled slightly, closed my eyes without answering him, and changed the subject. My voice was hoarse and rough. "Ethan, do you remember the question you asked me at the beach?" I coughed suddenly. Ethan poured me a glass of water, but I waved it off, shaking my head. For a moment, it felt like we were back at the hot pot restaurant that day, only our roles were reversed. He placed the glass on the bedside table before asking, "What?" "You asked if I wanted to end our friendship," I said, coughing lightly before continuing. "Yes, Ethan. Don't come looking for me again. There is no longer any friendship between us." Hearing this, he took a step forward. "We've known each other for nearly 10 years, and you want to end it all over something so trivial?" he asked, his voice strained. I met his eyes, finding unfamiliar emotions swirling within them. I spoke slowly and clearly. "What do you consider trivial? Getting tangled in a fishing net and nearly drowning, is that trivial to you?" In a moment of what seemed like an emotional breakdown, he kneeled beside my bed, his head lowered, and said in a trembling voice, "I'm sorry, Clara." It was his first real apology. "You must have been so scared. It was my fault." He reached for my hand, but I gently brushed it away. "It is your fault," I said coldly, "and I don't intend to forgive you. So, can you please leave now?" He was about to say something else when the door of the ward was pushed open again. "Are you done yet?" Sophie stood there, raising her chin and glancing at me with condescending eyes. "Ethan said he didn't mean it, and he already apologized. What more do you want from him?" I looked at her sideways, absent-mindedly tapping the metal railing of my bed. "Sophie, who do you think you are to come in here and blame me?" I couldn't help but wonder if it was because I had given in a few times in the past that made her feel she could be so arrogant in front of anyone. "You?" Sophie stepped forward, glaring at me. "Ethan was right. You really do lack manners." Ethan, who had been silent all along, suddenly spoke. "Sophie, you should go back first." "You're kicking me out?" "I'm speaking up for you." Sophie looked at him with a betrayed expression. I picked up the water glass, took a small sip, and cleared my throat before saying, "Be a bit nicer to Ethan and suddenly you think you're someone special, right?" Sophie's hands by her side were already clenched into tight fists, but it seemed her pride wouldn't allow her to just walk away. I continued slowly. Can't you see who you really are? You're just a student with slightly better grades than average, only able to get a scholarship from a company without any real chance of going further academically. Ignoring her angry expression, I continued nonchalantly. The company that sponsors your scholarship is my family's. I will advise my parents, the ones you are accusing of not raising their children properly, not to cooperate with the school anymore. Of course, you don't have to worry too much. You can always maintain your image to keep Ethan's admiration and then have his family sponsor you. Clara! She was so angry that she didn't care about her image anymore, shouting loudly like a cornered animal. Sophie, Ethan said, stepping in front of my bed. Like I said, you should go back first. Perhaps Sophie had really thought about Ethan's family's ability to donate scholarships, because after staring at me in silence for a long, tense moment, she left without saying another word. Sorry, Clara, I didn't let her follow. Stop, I interrupted him. Don't call me that. Do you have to be so ruthless? His voice was gentle, pleading. I still remembered the overwhelming feeling of the seawater hitting me, enveloping me tightly and penetrating everywhere. That silent yet heavy feeling of suffocation was something I would never forget for the rest of my life. I couldn't help but cough a few times, sighing. I'm tired. I want to rest now. The confrontation ended with Ethan leaving. It wasn't just an excuse to dismiss him. I was genuinely exhausted, and I soon fell asleep. The next day, when my mom came to see me, I suddenly remembered that I still didn't know how I had gotten back to shore. Obviously, I couldn't have been washed ashore by myself. At that time, the waves were strong, dragging people deeper into the ocean. If I were to be washed ashore, it would only happen when the waves receded, or if the wind and waves changed direction. But neither of those situations could have happened in such a short period of time. And I had to get ashore quickly in order to survive. So I was sure that I had been rescued. As for whether it was Ethan who rescued me, I didn't even consider it and directly ruled it out. Mom, who saved me and brought me ashore? I asked. My mom opened the thermos she had brought and said, A boy named Alex carried you on his back. But from what he said, it seems he found you after you were washed ashore. I nodded without saying anything, picked up the spoon my mom gave me, and drank the soup spoon by spoon. After being discharged from the hospital, I quickly returned to school and continued to attend my classes like a regular student. But in fact, I had been thinking about the incident constantly. One day, I ran into a classmate who had been to the beach with us that day. Is your body okay now? She greeted me with a friendly smile. I nodded. Much better, thank you. I paused for a moment and then asked, Did you see who rescued me that day? Of course, she said, her eyes widening. Many people saw it. Alex carried you up. Alex? I looked puzzled. Alex is quite famous on campus, and he's your senior. Don't you know him? I shook my head dryly. Do you have Alex's contact information? Can you give it to me? You wouldn't want someone who saved you without even a word, would you? A casual, teasing voice came from behind, interrupting the girl's words. It's gotta be our Alex. 3 years have passed, and still no one can beat him. And this young lady wants his contact information every day. I turned around and saw 2 guys standing behind us. Then, the taller one, who was wearing a black half-sleeved shirt and loose gray shorts, looked at me and chuckled lightly. He playfully scolded the guy who had spoken earlier and said, in a magnetic and low voice, Get lost. Without even giving me a chance to speak, he gently pushed the girl away and then they left. Are you looking for me? Now it was just the 2 of us left. I nodded, saying seriously, Thank you, senior, for saving me in time that day. He raised an eyebrow slightly. It was just a small favor. He made it sound like he had just effortlessly lifted me out of the sea. I pursed my lips and continued, Senior, are you free for lunch today? I want to treat you as a thank you. Not quite. I have some things to do today, Alex said casually, then added, Or you can add me as a contact and I'll let you know when I'm free. I didn't find anything wrong with that suggestion. Okay. Why didn't I see you sticking with your friend today? He asked again. What? I didn't understand what he meant. It's nothing. He didn't repeat himself and glanced at his phone after adding me as a friend. He said he had a class to get to and left. On the way back to my dorm, I met Ethan again. "Where did you go?" he asked. I thought to myself, "What's it to you?" But I still said politely, "Just some personal matters." His drooping eyes showed a hint of loneliness. "Today, I went to that hot pot restaurant." I nodded absent-mindedly and felt annoyed looking at the path he was blocking. "Back then, when I left you with Sophie and walked away while you were eating alone, were you feeling sad?" Think carefully. Our discord really started from that moment. He seemed to be repentant, but he was still unwilling to completely bow down. "Just say what you want to say. I'm getting impatient," I said. After half a minute passed and he still hadn't spoken, I was about to bypass him and leave. "Clara," he said, stepping closer to me and looking into my eyes. "I don't like Sophie. I just appreciate her, that's all," he said in a rare, serious tone. "I got used to you always being by my side. I thought you would never leave, so you thought you could ignore me, casually hurt me." I finished his sentence for him. He moved his lips as if to protest. I waved my hand to stop him. "If it's an apology or something similar, don't bother saying it, it's meaningless." "Well, what do you want me to do then?" he asked with a bitter smile. I used my bag to push him away just a little. "Just stay away from me." I quickly passed by him, taking quick steps as if I were avoiding a virus. Just as I entered my dorm, I received a message from Alex. "I'm free on Saturday," I typed on the keyboard. "Me too. So should we go in the noon or afternoon? Let's go in the morning. What should we eat in the morning?" I paused for a moment and then replied, "Okay." In the 9 years I had known Ethan, I had never seen him get into a physical fight. One reason was that no one would deliberately provoke him, and secondly, his reputation for practicing free fighting since elementary school was well known, but Alex was a tough one. On Saturday morning, Alex messaged me on time. "I'm downstairs at your building." I quickly grabbed my bag and ran downstairs. He looked pretty much the same as the last time I saw him, but Alex ended up taking me around for the entire day, from the commercial street to the department store. After lunch, I thought we would head back to school, but he drove to a newly opened and very popular bubble tea shop. "Want a drink?" he asked, pressing the car window button and nodding towards the tea shop. I shook my head. "I'm too full from lunch." But as the sweet smell of bubble tea wafted over, I couldn't resist feeling tempted. Seemingly aware of my internal struggle, Alex chuckled. "Do you want some?" Looking at the sign outside the tea shop advertising their new drinks, I whispered, "I do." "Wait here." He nodded and got out of the car to join the long line. I watched his tall figure in the crowd and felt momentarily flustered. From dining out to having fun since the beginning of the day, he had paid for everything. He never gave me a chance to even pull out my wallet, but I should have been the one treating him. When Alex came back, it had been more than 10 minutes. I took the bubble tea from him, feeling a little guilty that I could have lined up myself. He just fastened his seatbelt, gripping the steering wheel with one hand. "There were so many people. I was afraid you wouldn't make it through the crowd," he said, offering a simple explanation. I accepted the reason. It wasn't until late in the evening that we leisurely returned to school. As we reached my dorm building, I was about to say goodbye and head upstairs. "Just a moment," he interrupted. Then he leaned in, tilting his head close to my neck. I instinctively took a step back. What's wrong?" He grabbed my arm and pulled it back gently. "Don't move. Is there a bug here?" I dared not move since bugs were my lifelong enemy. Following the principle of not moving if the enemy doesn't move, I stood perfectly still, letting him deal with it. He removed the bug, and I breathed a sigh of relief. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind blew past, even lifting my bangs. I stepped back to see clearly. Ethan, with a grim face, threw a punch at Alex, who calmly caught his fist. "What were you guys doing?" Ethan's voice was harsh. I frowned, stepping in front of Alex and pushing Ethan away. "Are you crazy?" "Wait," he interrupted, his eyes fixed on Alex. Ethan squinted at him, but neither man loosened their grip, the veins bulging on their hands. My wrist was twisted as Alex was still holding my hand firmly. I winced in pain. Ethan's gaze returned to me, and he immediately let go of my hand. My wrist was red from the lack of circulation, a clear sign of being held too tightly. Alex also let go of Ethan, then held my wrist and clicked his tongue lightly. "Does it hurt?" I shook my head. It's fine." Ethan looked somewhat flustered. Clara, I didn't mean to. Ethan, I said indifferently. Just please, can you stop bothering me? Despite the calm tone of the conversation, there was still a hint of annoyance and helplessness in my voice. Even if I liked you before, at least I can tell you now, I don't like you at all, I said. Ethan's face fell instantly. He moved his lips, but no words came out. After half a minute, he murmured, seemingly lost, So, you don't like me? I couldn't understand why he looked so deeply hurt, as if he was the one with unrequited love, and I was the one hurting others with the knowledge of being liked. The campus radio played soft and soothing instrumental music in the background, but my voice was devoid of any emotion. Yes, I don't like you, I said. That day, he never took another step closer. He only gazed at me with eyes full of sadness before leaving without another word. Feeling sad? I shifted my gaze from Ethan's retreating back to Alex. Sad about what? He sounded emotional in an unclear way. I realized what he was implying and shook my head slightly. I no longer had any feelings for Ethan after he had repeatedly targeted me because of Sophie, regardless of liking or friendship. Just a bit melancholy, I admitted. Not for him, but for myself. Alex lazily murmured, Kids' minds are clear, huh? I looked at him puzzled, tilting my head. He just raised an eyebrow without explaining. Just glancing at my phone, I realized it was late and it was time for me to go back. I politely said goodbye and left, not being used to saying goodnight to the opposite sex. But I was pulled back the next moment. However, Alex didn't touch me. He just hooked the chain of my bag. Got something else to say? His expression was calm. You haven't said goodnight to me yet. Feeling a bit awkward, I smiled and said, Well, good night. Go on then, he said with a smile in his voice. His voice was particularly deep and pleasant, making me inexplicably blush. Back in the dorm, I splashed my face with cold water. I thought maybe the temperature had risen again that day. After washing up, I lay on my bed playing on my phone, and the first social media post I saw happened to be from Alex. There was no caption, just a picture. A pot of flowers, pale yellow tinged with white. Our year counselor had left a comment in the section. He asked, What kind of flowers are these? Alex replied promptly, My Clara. I blinked at his reply, my gaze locking on the two words he used. Half a moment later, I turned off my phone and placed it under my pillow, pulled the blankets up a bit more, covering half my face, all in one swift motion. In the quiet night, only the stars witnessed my confusion. The next day after my afternoon class, I received another message from Alex. He tricked me into going out for dinner by saying he was returning the invitation from the day before. But when it was time to pay, just like the previous 2 times, I was told the bill was already taken care of. Back at school, I purposely walked faster, leaving Alex behind. Are you still mad? Alex's voice floated slowly to me. Rolling my eyes internally, I ignored him. The footsteps behind me gradually quickened, eventually aligning with mine. Quite temperamental, huh? He drawled. I pretended not to hear him. Suddenly, Alex sped up and stopped right in front of me. Unable to stop in time, I crashed right into him. There was a stifled laugh from above me. Slightly annoyed, I glared up at Alex. Just as I was about to say something, a trembled shout interrupted us. Clara! I recognized Sophie's voice, but it sounded like an angry scream. As I turned to look, her expression was contorted and she was trembling all over. The gaze she directed at us was something I had never seen before. It was more disturbing than Ethan's anger the other night. She seemed tens of times more frightening. It was the look of someone who wanted to tear you to pieces, leaving no room for escape, with a terrifying determination to take it all down with them. In that moment, I realized I had misunderstood many things. The book in her arms fell to the ground with a thud, but she didn't even bother to pick it up. Sophie, the girl who supposedly valued academics above all else, was allowing her books to scatter on the floor. What was even more chilling was the realization that the reason for her sudden, drastic change was Alex. To be more precise, she liked Alex. She liked him to an extreme with no boundaries, willing to go to any lengths for him. Before I could react, Sophie had already rushed forward and pushed me hard. I stumbled back, instinctively catching myself with my hands on the rough pavement. Alex approached and helped me up, gently opening my hand. Streaks of blood mixed with gray dirt seeped through the skin of my palm. Alex only looked at it for a few seconds, then lightly let go of my hand. Expressionless, he walked towards Sophie. That was the first time I ever saw him truly angry. He wasn't yelling, just staring at her with dark, unsettling eyes. "Who are you?" His tone was compressed, very different from his usual self. Sophie's eyes quickly filled with tears. "Don't you remember me?" Listening in a daze, I temporarily forgot about the stinging injury on my hand. As she tearfully explained, I gradually began to understand. According to Sophie, at the beginning of the school year, she was being harassed by a ruffian in her class. But after she rejected him several times, he held a grudge. When Sophie was passing by the basketball court one day, he suddenly threw the basketball directly at her. However, Alex, who was playing on another court, intercepted it. "You play dirty even against girls," he had apparently said. It was during that incident that she fell for the senior who hadn't even spoken to her. Sophie took a step forward, speaking rapidly about all their supposed chance encounters. She even mentioned specific dates. But from Alex's blank expression, it was clear he didn't remember any of it. I was somewhat shocked by what I was hearing. I had always thought she and Ethan had mutual feelings for each other. But a few days ago, Ethan had said those inexplicable things to me. And now, here was Sophie, publicly confessing her feelings to Alex. "Don't tell me you don't remember anything at all." She shook her head, looking straight at Alex, her voice trembling with a mixture of hope and anger. Alex was very calm. No impression at all. Sophie looked like her entire belief system had collapsed. Her slender white wrist reached out to tug at Alex's sleeve. "I did so much for you, even—" Her voice faltered, and she gave me a quick, venomous glance before shifting her gaze back to Alex. "You really don't know?" I keenly caught the change in her tone. "Even? Even what?" Standing to the side, I looked at the girl who was considered a cold goddess by so many, tears welling up in her eyes. Suddenly, I had a feeling that Sophie might not be as simple as we all thought. She seemed to have a much more secretive side. From the few days I had spent with Alex, although he sometimes appeared unserious, he was not someone who would be rude to girls. However, Sophie was the exception. Alex evaded her outstretched hand and sighed lightly. "What did you do that's related to me? Have you done something so remarkable that it moved you to tears? And now you feel you have to kidnap me to respond to these so-called sacrifices you made for me without my knowledge?" Tears streamed down Sophie's face, her emotions crumbling into chaos. It was clear that Alex's words had a big impact on her. Some passing girls whispered in sympathy for Sophie, their words clearly audible to me. I didn't show anything on my face, but inside I sneered more than 3 times. Most people are like that, just seeing one side of a scene and making assumptions, easily labeling others without knowing the full story. Alex probably didn't like being the center of attention, as he didn't say much more to her. Turning back to me, he said, "Let's go. I'll take you to treat your wound." I winced and nodded, my wound now feeling a bit numb. Just as I was about to walk away with him, Sophie cried out, "Clara, stop!" I took a deep breath and turned around to look at Sophie, who was like a sticky, persistent slug. Alex stepped in front of me. "If you have something to say it now." Sophie's soft hair was blown across her face by the wind, looking messy and disheveled. She chuckled, but there was no humor in her eyes. "What? Are you afraid I'll push her again?" "I'm just talking." Alex ignored her erratic behavior and didn't move an inch. I patted his shoulder and said, "Alex, it's fine. I also want to hear what she has to say." Circling around Alex, I stood in front of Sophie. "What do you want to say?" She smiled and walked closer, speaking in a low voice right next to my ear. "It's all because of you. I won't let you off the hook." I wasn't surprised at all. It seemed like I was waiting for her to say those very words, giving me the perfect reason to fight back. I smiled too. "I won't let you off the hook either." Later, Alex took me to the campus infirmary to treat my wound, and we both tacitly agreed not to mention what had just happened. The teacher at the infirmary was an experienced old man, a bit eccentric. He was dabbing my wound with a cotton ball soaked in alcohol. When he reached a more severe part of the wound, I couldn't help but flinch. Be gentle. She's a bit scared of pain, Alex said, his voice a bit faster than usual. I'm already being gentle enough. Why don't you do it? All right, I'll do it. You go rest. Alex quickly took over. The teacher, with eyes that seemed to see through everything, looked at Alex disdainfully. In the end, seeing that disinfecting wasn't particularly challenging, he let Alex handle it. Be gentle. Alex's voice was as smooth and soothing as jade. It was a voice that few girls could resist. I turned my head away without looking at him and gave a soft, okay. Alex seemed to have some skill in applying the medication. I didn't feel any pain as he did it, and it was over almost unconsciously. The teacher seemed to have endured our presence for as long as he could, frowning and waving his hand to shoo us out. Once it's done, leave. The infirmary isn't a place for you lovebirds to show affection. Without giving me a chance to deny it, Alex agreed and led me out. Afterwards, try not to get it wet, and then I actually knew that Alex you kept mentioning. I realized right after complaining, stiffening my face as I turned to look at him. Great, he chuckled slightly and said, just call me that from now on. With that, he lightly ruffled my hair. I heard my heartbeat getting louder and louder, as if there was a frantic little deer trapped inside my chest. With my roommate's help, I successfully finished washing up that night. Sitting in front of the mirror, wiping my face, I couldn't help but think of Alex again. When I came back to my senses and looked at the mirror, I realized I was smiling without even knowing when I had started. But not long after, this good mood was shattered. My phone rang, displaying the familiar but now unmarked number. Given how Ethan had directly called my mom before, I hesitated but still answered. I heard you had a little disagreement with Sophie today. His tone carried a hint of sarcasm. Planning to stand up for her, force me to apologize? It was quiet on the other end for a few seconds before he said, No, I heard you were pushed. Are you hurt? I rarely hesitated for a moment, feeling a bit surprised. Ethan's stern voice had almost forced me to apologize to Sophie the other day, a memory that felt as if it was just yesterday. But now, his attitude had made a complete 180-degree turn. But apart from that brief surprise, I didn't have any other feelings. I was about to hang up the phone directly when I suddenly remembered something. Ethan. What is it, Clara? Does Sophie have some secret she can't tell? I asked. Ethan was unusually silent for a long time before refuting. No. His denial lacked any credibility. The answer I wanted had already been obtained during his long silence. In the first few days, I was completely clueless. The clue came from a conversation I overheard on my way to the cafeteria at noon. I was puzzled. How could Sophie get a scholarship and not me? Your grades aren't as good as hers. What a joke. We went to the same high school and her grades were just average. Even now, her performance in class is lackluster. Whenever the teacher asks a slightly challenging question, she can't answer it. Then ask her what her ranking was last semester. See if she was ahead of you. I froze in place. A seemingly unrealistic but surprisingly plausible explanation popped into my head. Academic fraud. After some inquiries, I finally got my hands on Sophie's academic records. Her ranking matched her scores, but the issue was with the scores themselves. She had scored extremely high in a certain course, ranking first in the entire grade. Everything became clear to me when I finally saw her exam paper for that course. But suddenly, I felt uncertain. Did I really want to expose her with this paper? I remembered one evening seeing her grandmother handing her a stack of old crumpled bills at the school gate, telling her not to be too frugal and to eat something good. Sophie had pushed the money back, asking her grandmother to use it to buy medicine instead, saying she didn't need it because she had a scholarship. During the days I hesitated, Sophie took action. Can you guys explain to me what's going on here? 2 identical research reports were slammed down right in front of me, and I instantly froze. Out of the corner of my eye, a figure appeared at the door, and I looked over. Sophie was innocently sipping milk with a straw, blinking at me. My roommate and I had both signed up for a city-level competition, but we were in different groups. Coincidentally, both of us were responsible for writing the research reports for our respective groups. I never expected that she would conspire with Sophie to frame me. What hit me even harder was that when I opened the document on my computer, the edit history was gone, clearly tampered with. I had never hidden my computer password from my roommate, but I never thought she would go this far. Rather than having her delete the document outright, Sophie had orchestrated it so I would be accused of plagiarism. Humiliating me in public seemed to be her ultimate goal. I had no defense. I just felt it was all so absurd. The me who had felt a bit sorry for Sophie just a few days ago was genuinely laughable. As we stood there in a deadlock, Alex unexpectedly showed up. Clara didn't cheat. All eyes in the room immediately turned to him. Alex pulled out his phone and placed a picture on the table, showing a side profile of me. I was momentarily stunned, but then immediately realized what it was. Zooming in on a corner of the photo, I remembered that day. I had been in the library putting the finishing touches on the report when Alex suddenly messaged me asking for my location. A while later, he had walked in with a cup of milk tea and placed it in front of me. It was the new one from the shop we had gone to on our last outing. I had softly whispered my thanks through the straw, feeling a mix of confusing emotions. It was a picture he had taken then, and coincidentally, my computer screen was partially visible in it. The photo showed a timestamp that was earlier than the one my roommate had submitted, and just like that, the mud that had been slung at me was washed away. With some lingering anger and conveniently with the office of Sophie's college dean nearby, I gave a brief thanks to Alex and headed straight for Sophie. Her face had darkened the moment Alex appeared. I grabbed her wrist and pulled her towards the dean's office. What are you doing?" She looked at me with annoyance, trying to pull her wrist back. "Let go." I didn't loosen my grip on her wrist, just smiled back at her. "Plagiarism, academic fraud." "Sophie, what else is it that you don't know?" In an instant, all the strength drained from her, and her face turned pale as I dragged her towards the office. She wasn't completely clueless. She knew I wouldn't expose her without solid evidence. But one thing caught me completely off guard. Ethan was somehow involved. She had made a deal with the professor of her major course, allowing her to secure a corporate scholarship. Their stories matched up remarkably well. The benefit for the professor was that a third of the scholarship money would go to him, but how could a university professor jeopardize their entire career for just a few $100? Once this matter came out, many people spoke up about the professor's inappropriate behavior toward female students, and it became clear that Molly's benefits were not just limited to this one case. I just shook my head after hearing all this. I had never interacted with that professor, so I wouldn't make any judgments. Starting from our sophomore year, Sophie's relationship with Ethan had grown closer. This time, the corporate scholarship was funded by Ethan's father's company. Ethan had handed a sum of money to the professor, telling him that the spot was reserved for Sophie, and he just needed to keep improving her scores as he had been doing. Sophie, true to herself, could have directly taken the money from Ethan, but she still insisted on going through the official scholarship channel. She wanted both the money and the status that came with it. The whole truth finally came out. The professor was dismissed, and the school chose not to involve the police. Considering Sophie's family situation, she was not expelled but was given a disciplinary action. I didn't have any mercy this time. I pressed Sophie to repay all the past scholarships she had falsely obtained. The only reason I didn't involve the police was that I considered that if she went to jail, her grandmother would have no one to take care of her. Thinking back to what she had said before, I couldn't help but laugh. Her roommate said she always had a prominent note on her desk: to become better and make him notice me. She had cheated for the scholarship, clearly just for living expenses. But in her own words, it had turned into being entirely for Alex. As she left the office, I said one last thing to her: don't drag Alex into the dirty things you did. As for Ethan, the school not only disciplined him, but also contacted his father to return the donated scholarship fund. It was made clear that they would no longer accept any donations from him in the future. Ethan's father was furious when he found out. He ordered Ethan to study abroad immediately and canceled the shares he had planned to transfer to his name upon graduation. The day before Ethan left, he showed up below my dorm building. I didn't want to see him. Since I had found out about what he had done, I felt like I had never really known him at all. I glanced at him, then calmly walked past. Clara. My disgust peaked in an instant. Unusually, he wasn't angry and even managed a small smile. Don't be mad, it's just this one time. You won't have to deal with me for several years, he said. I furrowed my brow and asked, So, what do you want? I just want to explain to you, he said calmly, almost gently. I helped Sophie not because I liked her. Ignoring the fact that I didn't believe him at all and that it didn't matter to me anymore, I didn't say it out loud. She told me that if I helped her get a scholarship, she'd get a boyfriend and then personally explain to you that there really was nothing between us. What kind of reason is that? And now you're blaming me? I asked Ethan. Do you even believe what you're saying? He looked at me, and the emotions in his eyes were stubborn and sincere. She promised me that you would forgive me. I didn't know if he was really that foolish in matters of the heart, or if he was just looking for another excuse. But I went along with what he said. She lied to you. Ethan's expression fell and he forced a smile. My phone vibrated and I picked it up to check the message. It was from Alex. I treated you to dinner last time. Isn't it time you returned the favor? I chuckled. He had boldly used the same excuse several times. Do you like Alex? Ethan asked. I stifled a smile, put away my phone, and looked at Ethan. It's none of your business, I replied. I thought he was going to bring up our past issues again to question me about my change of heart, but he just quietly lowered his gaze. After a while, he looked at me and curled his lips slightly, devoid of any insincerity. A friend mentioned him, said he seems like a nice guy. I was somewhat surprised. Ethan let out a sigh, as if he was finally giving up on something. You should consider him. I looked up at Ethan. Though his lips were curved into a smile, his eyes revealed a deep sense of sadness. Without overthinking it, for the first time in a long while, I sincerely responded to his words. Okay. 2 months had passed since the Sophie cheating incident. The city seemed to have skipped autumn and gone straight into winter. Sophie had dropped out of school not long after the incident. She understood that once her carefully constructed facade had crumbled, no one would praise her again. Rather than be scorned by others, it was better to just leave first. It was late in the evening when I finally finished arranging some things for a student club and went back to the classroom to get my books from the afternoon. Opening the door, I found only Alex sitting alone in the empty classroom, playing with his phone. He heard the noise, looked up, and said, "You're back." "Why haven't you left yet?" I asked, walking over slowly. He gestured towards a stack of my books on the table. "Keeping an eye on your books? Couldn't you have just messaged me or returned them directly to my dorm building downstairs?" Why wait this long? But I didn't call him out on it and simply nodded, pretending to agree with his logic. "You have a point. In thanks, let me treat you to dinner." He paused, raising his hand to stop me. "No need for a dinner invitation. Let's do something else." I halted my search for my books and turned to look at him. "How about you let me court you?" he asked, raising an eyebrow, his words straightforward and candid. As the setting sun cast a warm orange glow on the books beside me on that cold winter day, I felt a warmth I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Without much thought, I casually replied, "Sure." A few seconds later, I heard a light chuckle from behind me. From that day onward, Alex seemed to have slipped into every corner of my life, becoming an omnipresent figure. The roommate who had so obligingly helped Sophie frame me moved out, leaving just the three of us in the dorm room. Both of my remaining roommates were subtly suggesting that I should accept Alex's advances. I was thinking the same thing. I changed into a winter skirt, put on a long cream-colored coat, and did my makeup before happily skipping to their classroom building. But as soon as I stepped outside, I couldn't help but shiver from the biting cold. By the time I struggled to the meeting spot, my legs had gone completely numb. I cursed myself 1,000 times in my heart. Out of all the things to study, I had to pick fashion on cold days with no pants. Just as I managed to recover some feeling, the bell rang, signaling the end of class. In the bustling crowd, I quickly spotted Alex. "Alex." He also immediately noticed me. My joyful greeting was abruptly halted by the cold, dark look in his eyes. "Who taught you to dress like that?" he asked. Before I could respond, he grabbed my hand and led me against the flow of the crowd into an empty classroom, locking both doors behind us. I thought he was mad at how revealingly I was dressed and pouted in frustration. But in an instant, Alex pulled me up to sit on a table, took off his own black coat, and carefully wrapped it around my legs. During the whole process, he didn't even touch my legs. What kind of weather is this that you dare to wear a skirt? Alex's reprimand was low and serious. After what seemed like ages, I finally felt my legs again and playfully nudged him with my foot. Is it not good looking? I blinked, tilting my head to look at him. It's good looking, he admitted, and I clearly felt a change in his eyes. Do you like it? I asked. I like it, he nodded. I think you look good too. I like you. Alex was momentarily stunned, then he leaned over with both hands resting on the table next to me, staring directly into my eyes. Is that what I think it means? My face reddened a bit, but I mustered the courage to meet his intense gaze. Yes. As soon as I said it, I hesitantly raised my hands to cup his face and lightly touched his cheek. Alex's voice was deep as he asked, "Just like this?" Before I could respond, he firmly turned my chin towards him. Leaning down, the warm sun shone into the room, filtering through the window and piercing my half-closed eyes as the snow fell softly outside. That was my first kiss.